Hi guys, in this video lessons we will learn about logarithm, which is an important topic. So let's start with the definition. In mathematics, the logarithm is the inverse function of the inverse function of an exponential function. You may ask, what is an exponential function? The exponential function is basically this. It's written as y equals a to the power of x, where x is the exponent and a is the base. Graphs of exponential functions describe a growth or decay. It may change depending on the base. So we use exponential functions when something increase by increase or decrease by decrease. To give an example in real life, to calculate the intensity of an earthquake or like a growth in the population of a bacteria. So we use it in real life. To know if an exponential function is increasing or decreasing, we check the base. If base is in between 0 and 1, the function is decreasing. If the base is greater than 1, then the exponential function increases, which I will note that down. There are some rules for an exponential function to exist. For example, a must be bigger than a must be bigger than 0 or things like that, but we will talk about it later. And let's start with an easy question. Fx equals 2a minus 1 over 3 to the power of x is a decreasing function in which interval a is in. Since the exponential function is decreasing, the base must be in between 0 and 1. So we will just write the interval and solve it. So I write my base in between 0 and 1 and then solve the interval. And now let's move on to the other one. Before that, we have to make sure that we know this part. The rule says when a to the power of x equals to 1, b, it can be written as this, where a is the base of the logarithm, which means a comes to the base and b here, and then x. And the things in the green box will help you solving the question. It says a, which is the base, must be greater than 0, and a cannot be 1, and b must be greater than 0. These rules come from the definition of the exponential functions, which we learned in the beginning of the video. So we will solve the questions according to that. If y equals 3 to the power of x plus 1 negative minus 4, then what is the inverse of the function? As we talked in the beginning of the lesson, logarithm is the inverse function of the exponential, and exponential function is the inverse of the logarithm. So we have to leave the x alone by taking the logarithm. And then I take the logarithm. And then I leave the x alone. And then I change the places of the x and y. And this is the inverse of the function. And let's move on to this question. And the question asks us, in which interval is the function defined? Since this is a logarithmic function, as you remember, we have three rules. And according to three rules, this part must be greater than 0. And for the second rule, this part also cannot be equal to 1. And for the third and the most important rule, this part should be greater than 0. And if we solve the first inequality, we can use inequalities. So this is our first root. And for the second one, we have to keep that in mind that x cannot be equal to 2. This 2 cannot be in our interval. And for this part, we were gonna solve it in inequalities. If you don't know inequalities, you have to learn that for this topic. We can rewrite this as this. And these are our second and third roots. And let's create an inequality chart. And for the first function, we have the roots 1. And for the second function, we have the roots -4 and +4. As you know, these roots are not included our interval also. And let's place the signs. This function must be positive, so we start as positive. And since x has the sign negative, we start with the negative. And both of the functions needs to be positive, so our function, these two functions satisfy this interval. So we just write it. However, in the second rule, we said that x cannot be 2, so we subtract the 2 in our interval.